Hello, welcome to this video. In this video, we will learn buttons in Flutter app development. Buttons are user interface control material design component used in Flutter. It provides facility to user for taking certain kind of actions. It triggers action when user clicks or tap on it. Buttons widget is a part of material design library. Flutter has 5 different kind of buttons: elevated button, text button, outline button, icon button, and floating action button. Out of this floating action button we have already learned in previous video. Now first button, elevated button. This button represents slight elevation in the surface of UI screen. Elevated button replaces raised button which is now deprecated. This elevated button widget class launched in version 1.22 of the Flutter. The styling of elevated button can be done using elevated button dot style from class, which has styling attributes. The basic properties of elevated buttons are on pressed, which is the mandatory one that calls a function to perform an assigned task when button is pressed. Another property, that is child, to it takes text or icon widget to display text or icon on the button. And one more property, that is side, to change the color of side using border side widget. Another button, that is text button. This button represents simply a regular button with text as a label, and by default it don't have any border. Text button replaces flat button which is deprecated. Again, this button is launched from 1.22 version of the Flutter. Styling property of text button can be done using text button dot style from widget, which has styling attributes. Basic property of text button, again on press, which is mandatory one to perform certain task or assign task when button is pressed, and child, that takes text or icon widget to display text or icon on the button. Next, outline button. This button is text button with border as a special feature. That means it has border around the text button. Outline button replaces outline button which is deprecated. Similarly, it is launched from 1.22 version of Flutter. Styling property of this button can be done using outline button dot style from widget for styling attributes. Similar to text button, it has basic property, that is on press, which is compulsory one, which calls a function to perform certain action or assigned action, and child, that takes text or icon on to display on the button. Now we'll write code for buttons for all three buttons. This is the code that I have written already for button app bar, where I have made changes in the text of app bar only, title. Now in the body, under center property, child widget, I'll write elevated button. Elevated button has different properties. So under on pressed property, I'll write, now nothing is there, so I'll write blank function, and under child property I'll write text widget to display text which I want to display on the screen, on the button. Text is displayed on the button, or button is displayed at the center of the screen. Now to write code for other buttons, I'll select this code, elevated button code. Now to display multiple buttons on the screen, I use column widget because column widget takes multiple widget. Under children property of column widget, I paste the code which I copied, that is elevated button code. And I'll make changes accordingly. Text button, better I'll go one button at a time, one by one button. So first button, let it elevated button. Second button, I'll make change to text button, and that make changes in the text which is to be displayed. Now in the output column, in the column output displayed, on the top left side, text button don't have any border. Now for outline button, I'll make changes accordingly. If you see output, in the output, outline button has outline, that is border around it. Now I want to change color, so to make changes in the color, I'll use style property and elevated button dot style from, which has primary property. Using primary property, we can change color by using colors dot. I'll select yellow, colors dot yellow, and shade according as per my requirement. Now to change font size, I use textile property, textile and textile widget with font size property. So font size and color of elevated button is changed. Similarly, we can change font size of other buttons using style and button dot style from. For text button dot style from, under it style property, textile property and font size. Similarly, for outlined button, style outline button dot style from, and in that textile property and font size. Now you can see in the output font size are changed. If you press buttons, nothing is happening, but some events are triggered, you can see in the console. Now to check, we'll write print function under the on press property of elevated button, print and message to be displayed. For example, you pressed elevated button. If you run and press on elevated button, you will, in the console you can see you press elevated button message, but for other buttons it will show nothing. So we'll copy and paste it in other buttons as well under on press property function and make changes accordingly. When you execute and press on button, you will see the messages accordingly. You pressed elevated button, you press text button, you press outline button when you press respectively button.